Lately I've been thinking about this life and how it brought me here. Staring at this man in the mirror, I see him often here. Wipe my tears, only if you knew what I was going through. Only if you walked it in my shoes. Certain things don't like to talk about, but I'll always remember. The chaos in my mind turned my heart out in November. I'm surrounded by too many doors, not sure which way I entered. But I'm rocking with my loved ones, let you know that front and center. Found out my skin's tough as leather, I can storm through any weather. Addiction was the hardest battle I ever endeavored. It takes a lot.
Welcome back to the Message Hope podcast, where the hope stands for hearing other people's experience. My name is Adam.
My name is Mike, and today on the show we have Cynthia. Cynthia has 18 years clean. She's worked in the treatment field pretty much her entire recovery, and she's here with us to share her story. Cynthia, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I think this is pretty cool too, because usually we have people on here either Mike knows or I know.
Yeah.
And this might be the first time. Is this the first time? We've had a few people, but they always came with somebody that we knew or something like that. But this is like the first time where it's really like we have absolutely no idea who you are. Obviously, we heard of you from Gina. Mm-hmm. If you guys heard Gina, is it Gina G?
Gina A.
Gina A. Yeah. I don't know why I said Gina G. All right, so you guys heard Gina's story, and so she recommended you. So, yeah, we're grateful that you were able to come out tonight or today and make it out for the podcast. Yeah.
I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
So, Cynthia, we always start at the beginning. Tell us what it was like for you growing up. Like, was there addiction in the household? Did you have siblings? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Fontana, Felony Flats.
Nice. All right.
Oh, okay.
I
She has
grew
a
up.
game
Getting good already.
She had a game bang on it.
My earliest memories of life are not good memories. And my mom, however, did divorce the person, and but then it was never talked about again. It was like swept under the rug, and it always made me feel like I did something wrong.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a child. And so my mom was a single mom, but my grandmother lived with us, and my grandmother, for some reason, didn't like me. I don't know why, you know, but maybe because I was not a very good kid. But I was good until I was 13. I don't remember much about my younger years. You know, I did well in elementary school, but once I hit junior high school, I became angry. And, you know, I think that anger stemmed from, you know, nothing ever being, I didn't heal, you know, and feeling like that I did something wrong.
Yeah.
And so at 13, I started using drugs. My drug of choice back then was Red Devils, which, you know, I took a few of those and, you know, you didn't remember anything. So, and I grew up in an era of sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and I didn't give two shits about the rock and roll.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know, once I started using drugs, my whole focus was on drugs. Right. And at 15, I met my first love. I met heroin. And I used it for the next 36 years.
Yeah.
My goal in life was never to have children and be a bad mom, you know, but I taught all my kids how to become addicts.
Yeah. Do you remember what your introduction to using was?
To using heroin or just using it all?
Just your first experience using.
I just hung around people that, you know, were getting loaded, and, you know, it was the best thing, you know, because it helps you to not feel.
Yeah.
And I liked not feeling.
So it wasn't at home?
No. My mom, I don't think I ever saw my mom take a drink. My dad was an alcoholic.
Yeah.
But he wasn't really part of our lives. And so, you know, but knowing that he was an alcoholic, maybe that had something to do with it. But it just, you know, I think it was just that era where everybody was getting loaded. And once I got loaded, that was it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, they say you don't become an addict in one day. I believe that I was an addict the first time I used.
Yeah.
And the first time I used heroin, I can still remember where I was at, who I was with, and how I felt.
Oh yeah.
And you know, like I said, for the next 36 years, that was my whole existence. You know, even after having kids, and you know, I married their dad, which was also an addict, and years, you know, way back then when your houses were getting raided and stuff, both of you didn't have to go to jail. And so I always stayed, he always took the case. I always stayed home, and I was that wife that ran for her husband.
Yeah.
You know, I visited him in prison, and I took him drugs, and, you know, and that was my lifestyle. That was how we lived.
Right.
And I was never that mother that made her kids go to school. None of my kids graduated high school until my two daughters have graduated now, you know, but I don't know. I used to tell my husband all the time, I don't know where we went right, but we went right somewhere because I got great kids.
Yeah.
You know, and they love us. And, you know, losing their dad a couple years ago was the hardest thing any of us have had to live through, you know. But as a family, we rallied around each other, and, you know, we still do that today, you know.
So for somebody who might not know what Red Devils are, I wanted to ask you about that. I've heard of them. I've been told about them. But.
Seconal, it's a downer. Okay. And back then you could get a roll of Reds, 4 Reds for $1. Oh. You know. And I was forced to go to church when I was a kid. And I would, after church, in the social hall, they had donuts always, you know. I think donuts back then were like a nickel or something. So I'd take a quarter and I'd put it in the basket, and I'd always take out $1. I'd take out change, you know. So my stealing habits started very early. Sorry, kids, I don't think that's one of the things that they know about me. But, you know, that's in the beginning, that's how I would get the money to get loaded. Yeah. You know.
And this was like a street drug, right? Or was it a prescription?
No, it was, Seconal is usually a prescription, but
you could get it on the street.
Yeah, it wasn't a prescription for me. You know?
Oh yeah, of course.
But yeah, I had a friend that was selling them, and she was always available, and, you know, like I said, for $1, and you'd only have to take 1 or 2, and you'd get loaded, and you know. So, but then once I met heroin, everything else kind of took a back seat.
Yeah. You know. I could relate with that, but I haven't had like a soft introduction because I was on the prescription painkillers and was introduced to heroin because I was sick, and somebody was like, well, here, try this. It'll get you well. Yeah. And from then on, it was a love affair, like you said.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you know, and it was the drug of choice for everybody I was hanging around with, you know, at that time. And, you know, Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin and, you know, all of the people all the musicians were using it, you know, and for some reason at 15, it seemed like a good idea.
Right. Yeah. Right.
You know, 15, what do you know? You know?
Nothing.
Exactly.
Nothing. Not a damn.
And back then there was no smoking it, right? It was just,
it was just slamming it. Yeah. And I couldn't imagine, you know, doing it any other way. Yeah. It was just like, yeah. And then anything else that I ever used went in a needle. You know, for me, it was the only way to do drugs.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember we used to say we were wasting it if we didn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Until some years later when I didn't have any veins left, and then I would smoke a pipe with her, unfortunately. Yeah.
And just so you know, her daughter's in the room. Yeah. She's talking about her daughter.
Oh, okay, yeah. I guess.
People can't see, so.
Yeah, true.
So you were talking about your house getting raided. Were you guys dealing to support your habit? Is that why your house would get raided?
Yeah.
And
For my early years of I was in and out of juvenile hall, and my mom, she ended up dying when I was 18. She got to see me graduate high school in June, and she died in September of 1973. And after that, yeah, selling drugs was pretty much all I did, you know. And it became, you know, I knew that I had to sell enough to pick up again, but then everything else, you know, there was no saving money or, you know, just that was the hustle, you know, so. But, yeah, I started going to juvenile hall when I was 13 years old, and I got put on 6 months probation and got off after I was 18. So my whole juvenile years were in and out of juvenile hall. They sent me to a place, it was called Patterdale. It was a convent, and I'm not even Catholic. And but they sent me there when I was 15 instead of going to YA. And it was in Phoenix, Arizona. Well, and back then, Fish Fridays, you know, Catholics ate fish, and I don't eat fish. I don't eat fish to this day. And every Friday I was in a room called Adjustment to adjust my attitude, I guess. Yeah. But, and then I ended up running away from there and hitchhiking back to California. That was my way to get around, was I hitchhiked everywhere.
Back in the days when you could hitchhike.
Yeah.
And it was
it was not so scary.
Yeah.
But, and then when my mom died, my heroin addiction really took off at that time. And, you know, but I was 19 when I found out I was in jail, and I found out I was pregnant with my oldest daughter. And then for the next, 10 years, I didn't get in any trouble. Like I said, my husband always took the case, you know, and I would run for him, you know, taking things into prison for him and stuff. But I don't know. I didn't use, when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't use with her. When I found out I was pregnant with my second daughter, I stopped using and had her clean. And then with my son, I couldn't stop. And so I got on methadone. And he was born addicted to methadone. And sorry, son. But, you know, after that, I don't know, you know, that was my life. That I didn't know anything else. And I loved my kids, you know, but heroin came first.
Yeah.
And, you know, like I said, you know, I wasn't that mom. We moved constantly, you know. I wasn't that mom that made her kids go to school. And, you know, they all got involved in the wrong things. At 16 years old, I was selling heroin, so I let him sell weed, you know. I mean, who does that?
Yeah.
This mom, you know. And then I started going to prison. My husband was in prison, and so then he wasn't there to take the cases anymore.
Yeah.
And so then I started going to prison. And my first time in prison, I married this asshole because, you know, my best thinking was that he was going to take care of my kids. And I left him with a house and a car and a really good connection. And my oldest daughter lived on the streets. She was 14, I think. And I left him in an unhealthy situation, not realizing it was that unhealthy, you know. But I didn't protect him. And so she ran away. She lived on the streets. And I've done a lot of damage to my kids, you know, and things that I've had to learn to forgive myself for.
Yeah.
And, you know, somehow they still love me. And yesterday we had a celebration of life for my sister-in-law, that my husband's sister. And she was the one that I called when my house was getting raided. I'd call her and she'd come and get my kids all the time. And, you know, she helped raise them. And I don't, you know, I don't know. Life just passed me by, you know, and never thinking about the damage that I was doing at the time, you know. And then you get clean and you start working on yourself and you start thinking about all the damage you've done. And I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that my kids are a part of my life. You know, I didn't get clean until I had 7 grandkids. And now I have 8 great grandbabies. You know, they've never seen me loaded, you know?
Yeah.
And, but, you know, life is just, life is good today.
Yeah.
You know, but when I was going in and out of prison, first time I ever went to treatment, because I was getting out of prison and I didn't have anywhere to go. So I went to Cedar House.
Okay.
And I was there for 6 months. And they never talked to me about a discharge plan. What are you going to do when you're done here?
Yeah.
And so I was able to get passes. And the last pass before my 6 months, I went and found a connection because I didn't know what I was going to do. And that's what I knew how to do. Right. I knew how to sell drugs.
Yeah.
And so I started selling drugs again. And a few years later, I picked up another case, went back to prison. You know, and then by that time, my kids were grown, and they used to come and visit me. You know, and they could have turned their backs on us so many times, you know, and they never did. So
how many times have you been in prison total?
4.
4.
4, yeah.
And back then, they were breaking people off like a good amount of time?
Well, the first time I went to prison, I hired an attorney. I had a really good connection. So I hired an attorney, and I ended up taking a plea bargain. I picked up 5 cases in 4 months, and I took a plea bargain. They ran everything together, and I got 3 years. And my connection wanted me to rescind my plea and start all over, hire another attorney. And I said, look, 3 years sounds pretty good. And then that's when I married that other guy and put my kids through hell. And then my kids are grown. My daughter, Amber, and I were living together. Her dad, we were living in a very small little place, and we were getting high with our daughter. We were smoking that pipe with her. And then my husband went back to prison, and then we got another place. It was her and my daughter Amber and her kids and myself. And I was watching her life spiral out of control. And so this was the beginning of my, this was my bottom. And this was the beginning of my journey. And so one day I told her, I said, man, you need to quit. And she said, you quit, I quit. And that scared the shit out of me because I didn't know how to quit. I've been sticking a needle in my arm for 36 years. Right. I didn't know how to do anything different. And so my way of quitting was I was going to go commit suicide. And I know today that I've always had a higher power because I should not be sitting here telling my story. You know, I've overdosed, I don't know how many times. But I didn't have the courage to kill myself. And so, you know, I was just picturing CPS coming in and taking her kids, and they weren't giving them to this grandma. And so I was running on probation. I'd been running on probation for about a year and a half. And so I finally called my probation officer and I said, what do I need to do? And she said, go to court. And so it took me 3 times to get in to see a judge. And I knew I was going to be put in custody, so I didn't take any heroin. I just took some stuff so I could sleep. That's why my clean date is not until June 3rd, because I went in, I think it was May 30th. And it lasted me a couple days. But so when I finally got up in front of the judge, he said, where have you been? And I said, hooked on heroin. And so he put me in jail, but he gave me a court date for a week. And so in that week, that when I went back to court, him and the district attorney were arguing, and she said she is not ready to get out with her extensive heroin use. She's just not ready. And so he said when last week I asked her a question, and she gave me a very candid answer. So he let me out. He says, I'm giving you 24 hours to go see probation. And he said, if she doesn't give you the help you want or need, you come back and see me. And I've been in front of a lot of judges in my life, and none of them had ever said that. And so I went to, got out, went to probation the next day, and I was still kicking, not feeling well at all. And my probation officer, when I finally got in the back to see her, I said, I need a program and I need it right now. And I realized today, you know, I didn't know what I needed. And, you know, that was God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself.
Right.
And
just you getting through that 24 hours.
Yeah.
That was a higher power.
True. Very true.
I can't do that. Kicking?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go check in. Dude.
I knew if I didn't do something, my daughter was never going to do anything. I knew that.
Yeah.
And so my daughter Amber was actually the one that took me to probation. And then my probation officer wanted me to go through detox still. And I said, so she sent me to outpatient. We called around. They asked me, where do I want to go? And I said I wanted to go to Cedar House because it was familiar. Well, they didn't have a detox bed. So we called IVRS. They didn't have a detox bed. St. John of God had a detox bed, but they said I didn't qualify because I hadn't used heroin in the last 8 days. And I said, look, I can go remedy that right now, and I'll call you back.
Yeah.
But so then we called Gibson House. And because I hadn't used heroin in the last 8 days, they had a bed. And so I went to Gibson House, and you know, I can remember sitting in groups and thinking, you know, because it was always a recovering addict that was facilitating the groups. And I thought, man, one day I want to be sitting in that chair.
Right.
Never believing that one day I'd be sitting in that chair. And twice, while I was in treatment, my daughter Amber called, and her life was still a mess. But so she, you know, I told her, what do you want me to do? You want me to leave here? And what are we going to do? I've got nothing going for myself right now. So she went to live with her brother and got better. But after I was in treatment for 90 days, and after that I went to their sober living. And you had to have a job in 2 weeks. If you didn't have a job in 2 weeks, they told you to leave. And so I felt like I had 3 strikes. I was 51 years old. I never had a legal job in my life, and I'm a convicted felon. Who's going to hire this person?
Right.
Yeah.
You know? And so I went out for the first week, and I put in tons of applications and never got a call back. Because back then they used to have a box on the applications. Have you ever been convicted of a felony?
If so, please explain.
and so I was honest on the applications. Never did I get a call back. So then I gave myself 1 week to be honest. And after that, I was going to start lying. And I knew that if I started lying about one thing, that was going to turn into other things. And so it was a week to the day, the very first time I ever hit my knees. And I just begged. I said, if there is something out there, guide me, because if I go home, I'm going to die.
Right.
And so I got ready, jumped on a city bus. First, I got off on a place where there was a lot of fast food places. First place I went into, I got a job. I knew right then and there that was not a coincidence.
Yeah.
You know, and the district manager was there doing interviews, and I was completely honest with the woman, and she gave me a job.
Oh,
And so I thought, you know, this place is never going to be sorry that they hired me.
right.
So whenever somebody called off, they knew that they could call me, and I would come in. And, you know, if the state was going to come check the restaurant, I'd go in and clean. And so I did that for about 3 months. And they ended up closing the sober living. So I had to move on, and I went to another sober living. And so one day I was still working at El Pollo Loco. And I had to go down to the police department because at that time you had to register as a drug offender. And so I had to go change my address. And so I went down to the police station, did all that, and on the way back I stopped at Gibson House, and just to let them know I was still clean, doing well. And the boss happened to be in there, and she said, "Hey, I was just thinking about you. Can I have your phone number?" And so I gave it to her, not thinking anything of it, and she called me that night and said they were interested in hiring me. I had about 6 months clean. And I went and did the interview and got the job. And, you know, just the gratitude that I have today for Gibson House, you know, for seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself at the time, was... I still have that gratitude, you know. I never want to forget where I came from, because I could be back there at any moment, you know. So, but yeah, that was the beginning of my journey.
So what was the position that you got?
A counselor. In the very beginning, everything was handwritten. All the files and everything was handwritten. And, you know, you had to go back to school, though, you had 5 years to become certified. You know, I was 51 years old going back to school. It's like, you know, but I did well. I actually graduated with a 3.85.
Nice.
And, you know, I did the best that I knew how to do, you know, for never having a job or never working in the field or anything. You know, and then one day we were going to go to computers. And, you know, I'm already old.
Yeah.
I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a cell phone. I didn't have a clue. And I wanted to quit my job. You know, but I talked to people and, you know, I walked through that fear.
Yeah.
And, you know, I actually took the very first file that we were going to put in the computer, you know, because by that time I was already a supervisor. And I knew had to learn how to do it. You know, if I wanted my staff to do it, I had to learn how to do it. And so I also kept a hard copy file.
Yeah.
So I was making double work for myself, but, you know, it finally all worked out, you know. I'm still not where I'd like to be technology-wise, but, you know, I'm a lot better than I used to be. You know, anything I need to have done with my cell phone, I ask one of my kids or grandkids, you know, but... But life is good today, you know. I have a huge family that we get together often, you know, and I mean, it's not perfect. Some of them don't talk to one another, you know, but I have no control.
That's family, though.
That's what we do, you know. But, you know, I'm going to be 70 this month. And we're all getting together, and they're having a dinner for me, you know. And
nice.
so I'm blessed. And, you know, there's times that I still wonder how I got so blessed with the messed up person that I was, you know. But I'm not that person anymore.
Yeah. That's how I feel with, like, my kids. They're like, very well behaved, very respectful. I mean, they have behavior issues, but what kids don't, you know what I mean? But sometimes I just think like God knew what he was doing. He knew, because I'm a single dad, you know, so he knew I was going to be raising them on my own. So he's like, let me make sure they have good attitudes, you know what I'm saying, for the most part, because if not, he's going to go to jail, you know what I mean? So like, I think it kind of all worked out. And I kind of wanted to touch on what you're talking about, you know, getting high with your kids, right? Because that's my story, but I'm the kid that got high with his parents, you know. And one of the things I like think about often is like, I don't think my mom was like a young woman, right, getting high, thinking, you know, when I was 4 or 5 years old, thinking like, I can't wait to get high with my son, or I can't wait to get high with my daughter. But like, that's where the disease takes us, right? And my oldest daughter's 21, right? She's had problems here and there, right? I still think she has a problem, but that's for her to like come to me and we could talk and figure all that out together as a family, you know? I mean, she's not like throwing her life away. She's not running the streets. She works. She does everything she's supposed to do. Really good fucking kid. But I think to myself, like, especially when she was like in high school, I was picking her up from high school at least once a month for fighting, smoking weed, or drinking, you know? And I think to myself, like, if I would have still been getting loaded, I would have been getting loaded with her. You know, there's no doubt in my mind. You know, the mother of my children's parents, we got loaded with them too, right? It was like it's almost like a culture of drug use, right? And a lot of times when you're in the midst of all that, right, you don't even really see that it's a big problem until you like take a step back, get some clarity, and then you realize, well, there's
Not
a lot
normal.
of sickness here. Yeah, because, you know, by 17, 16 years old, I was picking up methamphetamine for my mom. You know what I'm saying? By the time I was 18, she knew I was getting loaded, and we were smoking together, and like, it was normal. You know, like for me, it was normal. I thought that this is how people lived. I thought that there was no way out. I thought that this is just how it was always going to be. And now, like, being able to take a step back from that, like, I get to see like how ingrained that sickness is, and it's not just like the drug use. I think for me, it's just like the culture of coming from like a rough neighborhood, the culture of growing up in the ghetto, the culture of all that stuff. I see it with a lot of my family. You know, I go around my family and I see, you know, my 5-year-old little cousin already throwing up gang signs, you know what I'm saying? And then it makes me sick to my stomach. I don't want to raise my kids in that environment. Like, I tell my son all the time, like, I will beat you up. I will beat all your homies up. Like, you ever come home from a gang or hanging out with the wrong fucking dudes, like, there's going to be a problem with all of us. You know what I mean? And you guys are all going to have to fight me, you know, because I don't want my son to grow up to be like that. You know, I shared it on the podcast before, but like when I was 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, something like that, my mom literally sat me on the couch and told me, Adam, I don't want you to be from a gang, but if you're going to be from any neighborhood, this is the neighborhood you have to be from. You know what I'm saying? Like, in my head, like, I could never see myself having that conversation with my kids, right? But that's only because of recovery, right? That's only because like something's changed like inside of me, and I started to see the world a little differently. But there's no doubt in my mind that if I would have kept going down the path that I was going, like, me and my daughter would already be getting high. I mean, we probably wouldn't even have a home right now. We wouldn't have anything that we have, right? We'd probably all hate each other. My kids would probably be just be a complete wreck, you know? And so, luckily for me, I caught a DCFS case at a very young age, to where too many cases at a very young age, to where it was like getting to the point where they're kind of done with me. You know what I mean? I even feel like I never shared about this, but I even feel like when I got a DCFS case this time, I think they kind of like wrote me off. They're like, this ain't gonna work. Like, I don't think he's gonna do what he needs to do. And they kind of already started like preparing where my kids are gonna go and how that's gonna look for us. And I knew something had to be different this time. But yeah, I just wanted to share that because, and Mike talks about this all the time. He says the only thing that's more powerful than a mother's what is it?
Love for her children.
Yeah, is the disease of addiction.
Yeah.
You know, that's the only thing that's more powerful than that, right?
Well, you know, and I don't think probably anybody has children with the thought of, you know, this is going to be my friend and I'm going to get high with them, you know. You know, but I also told my son, because my kids always hung around gangbangers. And I told my son one time, I said, if you ever get jumped in a gang, you think they kicked your ass, wait till you get home. I'm going to kick your ass, and then I'm taking you back to them, and they're going to jump you back out. You know, and with my kids, with my oldest daughter, we'd get high together, but we wouldn't do it in front of one another. Like she would go in a room and do it, and then I mean, we knew what was going on.
Yeah.
You guys would throw in together for the bag, but
Yeah.
wouldn't smoke it together.
But yeah, you're not going to see me do it.
Yeah.
You know, which doesn't make any sense,
Yeah.
but you know. But yeah, I never became a mom thinking this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
You know, I never wanted to become the mother I became. And, you know, but, you know, I say this today, I think my kids always knew that we loved them, but I don't think they liked us very much. You know, we were those parents that we were never parents. And it's sad, you know. They had to learn, they had to be their own cheerleader, you know. Because I was always in the bedroom trying to find a vein or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And it was never my goal,
Yeah.
you know.
You know, I have a similar experience I've used with my dad, and I didn't see him much. So my disease started out like most of us does, like with smoking weed and drinking. And I would see him, and I was already smoking weed, so he'd pull some out. And he'd always leave me with a little bit because I was already doing it. And I wouldn't see him for a few years, and he comes around, and I'm smoking the pipe. So he pulls out his pipe, and then he'd break me off some, and then later on, you know, then it was the heroin, and we did that together. And then we were stranded in Bakersfield one time. At this point, I'm smoking it, and we're trying to pick up. We got $20 between the two of us, and $20 $10 wasn't going to do it for me. So the first time I ever injected was with my dad too. But I always feel like, you know, he was doing the best he could. Like, he wouldn't bring it out and hand it to me first, but if I had it already, he'd bring it out, and that's just what we did. And I look back at it now, and it was like something kind of we bonded over in a sick way, you know.
Yeah. You know, you didn't see him for a long time, and then when you did, you know, that was our
time together. Yeah. So, but I mean, there was some kind of him wanting to do the right thing and not give it to me initially, but I was already, once I was doing it, it was like, all right, this is a new activity we can do together now.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
It's like, it's sick, but that's the disease of addiction, you know.
Well, it's actually considered a form of intimacy, bro.
Using together?
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
It's
bro.
ritualistic.
I'm not saying it's a healthy intimacy.
No.
It's a form of intimacy. Anytime we get loaded with somebody, drinking, smoking, getting high, whatever it is, bro, it's a form of intimacy.
What about doing crime together?
That's absolutely a form of intimacy. Again, not a healthy form, but there's definitely intimacy, right?
Yeah.
It's involved with that for sure.
Never looked
Especially
at it
if you
that
get
way.
away with it. You know?
Yeah. And you're really bonded over it.
Yeah, I run
Pull it
a group
off.
on intimacy, bro. There's like all these different types of intimacy, you know, and
Criminal intimacy.
but, I mean, it doesn't say that, but like it's an activity intimacy. You get to do an activity that you guys
I never
bond
looked
over.
at it that way.
You know, I tell people all the time. There's that's all we ever did was practice coping skills. They weren't the healthiest coping skills, but they're coping skills. You know, putting a needle in my arm's a coping skill.
You gotta
Drinking
sue the
myself
day.
to death is a coping skill. You know what I'm saying? It's not healthy, but it's a coping skill for sure. Yeah. So when you got clean and you went to treatment, did your daughter end up getting clean?
A little bit after I did.
Okay.
She went out to stay with her brother, and she ended up getting a job. And, you know, she drank a little bit, you know, but she did stop using meth. And luckily, my kids never got in trouble, you know. They didn't follow. None of them could do time, you know, if they had to. They would be crying to mama. But luckily, they didn't, you know, a DUI, you know, they've each had a DUI, I think. But other than that, you know, they became smarter, you know. Going to jail was not their thing, you know. And so I was grateful for that, you know. But, yeah, she got clean, and she is really involved in church. And matter of fact, she shared her story a few weeks ago. And she asked me to go, and I went. You know, and I cried through the whole thing. I mean, I was there for her, you know. But a lot of things that you know, unfortunately, I didn't protect her when she was young. And you know, after she was done, a lot of people came up to me and said, "Man, you're brave for being here," you know. And I told them I had to learn to forgive myself. If I don't forgive myself, I'm going to be loaded. And you know, I wanted to become the mother they deserved, even though they were grown and had children of their own, you know. And so that's what I do today. You know, I try to be the best me I can be every day, and be there for them, you know, just like they're there for me, you know. So it's been a journey, but, you know, life is good today. You know, I just recently stepped down from my position as a program coordinator because I am going to be 70, and it's a little chaotic. And I just felt like I needed to slow down a little bit. And so another position became available, and I knew it would be a lot slower, and I wouldn't have to take phone calls in the middle of the night and be on call 24 hours a day. And it's been good for me, you know. It's sometimes I really miss working with the women, but it's been a healthy choice that I made. You know, I don't want to completely retire. My husband and I had planned to travel, and you know, now that he's not here, I just don't know. I don't want to not work, you know. So, but the job that I have now, you know, it works for me.
So I have a question for you. You used for 36 years.
I used heroin for 36 years.
Your identity was in using and going to prison, you know, and I used for 17 years from when I started to when I finished. And when I got clean, I had to really like figure out who I was, you know. And then I got to like just recently like reconnect with my brother, and I've never had a relationship with him as an adult. And so like I'm reintroducing myself into him just after, like, I'm just now figuring out who I am, you know. And did you have...
I'm still learning.
You're still learning?
I'm still learning.
And you had to like almost reintroduce yourself to your kids as this new person too. You know,
sometimes my son tells me, don't judge. You know, he drinks alcohol a little bit. You know, I want my kids to be whoever they need to be. Yep. But I just, you know, he tells me, don't judge me. I'm not judging you. I love you and I care about you, you know, and I know where it can take you, you know. But, you know, I think that, I think with me working on myself, you know, our lives have just kind of, we've always been intertwined with the drugs and everything, and now we're just intertwined with, we all got busy lives. My son owns his own business. My daughters are both supervisors at their jobs, and we all get together when we can. But I'm still learning about myself, I just think that if for our family, for whatever reason, we just never found ourselves completely separated, and
so you like grew together,
yeah,
in a way.
And when my husband, I had 15 months clean when my husband got out of prison, and I had told him while he was in there, I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm gonna die. I mean, at one point, my arm was blown up like a football. I had so much poison, and I wasn't going to go to the hospital. Mm-hmm. They raided my house and saved my life. Mm-hmm. But I knew that if I didn't do something different, I was going to die. And so I had told him, I said, and if you want to continue to use, I'm going to have to love you from a distance because I can't do this anymore. Mm. And, I don't know. Our family just somehow remained strong, through all the chaos and all the once we got clean. My kids don't put me down. They don't judge me. It is what it is. Sometimes, we'll sit around and we'll talk and especially for some of the, my grandkids now have significant others, and because they don't know me like that, and they'll, we'll talk about, me going to prison or something, and they'll look like, what, but yeah, we were, somehow we stayed close, and they love me regardless of the things that have happened. And, I'm just, like I said earlier, I'm grateful for that. I don't know. God has blessed me in a way that, sometimes still I think, why? Mm-hmm. Why did you choose me through all the mess and all the chaos that I created, why did you choose me? But I'm grateful he did.
Yeah. So your husband decided to not continue to use?
Yeah. He had his last hurrah in prison.
Okay.
And he got out. He got out in 2007, and he never used again. So, we had to work on throughout our lives. We were together we got together when I was 13, he was 14, but for so many years we were separated, for whatever reason, him in prison, me in prison, I married somebody else while he was in prison. I didn't divorce him, but,
yeah.
You do what you do. But, I don't know where I was going with that. About him using, but we had to work on our relationship, and one of the things that I had told him when we ended up getting back together, I said, look, we can't throw the past in one another's faces. You've done shit, I've done shit, but if this is going to work, we can't throw the past in one another's faces. Mm-hmm. And so we never did, and we showed up for things, in the family that we were never really able to do, in our addiction. But, and when he passed, he had a severe heart attack in 2012, I think. And it kind of clogged his arteries, and he didn't have any blood flow in his legs. And so he went in for surgery in 2022, and we never brought him home. And it was hard on all of us, and the kids, the grandkids. The great grandkids are still kind of little, but you know, the older ones knew him, you know, and we still introduce him. You know, we have pictures all over the place, and even the ones that weren't even born when he passed, they can look at his picture, Papa, you know. So, you know, somehow our family just was able to survive through all the mess.
Did you guys do any, when he got out, did you guys do any like 12-step stuff or?
He was not, I took him to a couple conventions, and, you know, people are huggers.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like,
We're huggers.
Yeah.
you know, he's getting out of prison. Yeah, he wasn't hugging.
Yeah.
But he didn't, he went to a few meetings, you know, he even went to church with me a couple of times, but it just wasn't him, you know. And I had asked him when he was in prison, if you went through the program, substance abuse program in prison, you got out a little sooner. And he said, all I have is, you know, and he felt like you have to tell on people. And so he said, all I have is my name and my pride. I'm not doing it. You know, he said, I'll do my time and I'll get out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, he was not really a church or anything, but he stayed clean, you know. So I was grateful for that.
So what do you think? What was your recovery process like? What was it like? Like, was it meetings? Was it church? Was it therapy? Like what?
When I first got clean, I was hitting like a meeting every day. I met a group of people in the rooms that were willing to pick me up because I didn't have a vehicle. I didn't have a pot to piss in. So they picked me up, and we go to meetings all over the place. I went to conventions, and you know, I have kind of I've definitely slacked off on my meetings. But for the first few years, you know, and then I did all the suggestions they told me to do. I got a sponsor. I worked my steps. You know, when I was listening to Tammy's podcast, I had heard you talk about the 4th and 5th step. And when it came time, I had about 3 or 4 sponsors. And when it came time to work on my 4th step, the sponsor I had said, you know, are you afraid once I get to know you that I'm not going to love you? And I said, well, yeah, you know. But, you know, it was important to me to take the suggestions that was given, because if these people could stay clean, they must have known something, you know. And then, you know, like I said, when I, very first time I hit my knees and I realized that there was a God, you know, that he's always had a plan for me. It just took my ass a long time to figure it out, you know. And, you know, I do have a higher power today. My daughter's very into going to church, and she tries to get me, I go now and again, but even her pastor, you know, has tried to get me to go to church. I don't need to go to church to have a higher power, you know. Yeah. I don't need to go to church to know that my higher power is working in my life.
Or to talk to him.
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I don't have to go to church to talk to him. Sorry, babe. But, but you know, so yeah, you know, that's my life in a nutshell.
Awesome. Well, I got one more question for you. You got any other questions?
No.
No? Okay. Your story had a lot of hope in it, particularly for me, like going to prison so many times and then getting that first job and then getting that second job and then turning it into a career. Like a lot of people felt like, or feel like you felt on that first week looking for jobs, like no one's going to hire me, but that's not exactly the truth, you know? And so if you could give one piece of advice to somebody that has been through some of the things that you've been through and is maybe in the beginning or doesn't know where to start, like what would you tell them?
Have faith, you know, that it can work out as long as you do the footwork, you know, and There is a higher power out there for everyone. You know, mine may not be yours, but have faith. If you do the footwork, good things can happen. You know, I never in a million years did I think that my life would end up the way it's ended up. You know, because who was I? You know,
Right.
and today that I know that because I stayed strong and I did the footwork and I did what I needed to do, my life has ended up pretty well, you know, and you know, anything that I believe, anything that you may have lost can always come back as long as you continue to do the right thing, you know, so have faith and hope and just know that as long as you do the footwork, it's gonna work out.
Well, thank you, Cynthia, for coming. We appreciate you coming and sharing your story with us.
Yeah, make sure that you guys like, subscribe, comment on this video. Make sure you guys share this with anybody that you feel needs to hear Cynthia's stories.
But you'll never know unless you walked up in my shoes.
As someone who struggled with addiction in the past, how does it feel to be able to give hope to others who are still struggling now?
You know, it's such an honor to be able to hear other people's experiences of life, to see how when faced with the very thing that was sent to destroy you, kill you, and take you off forever didn't, but rather you have been given a second chance to give hope and be a light for those who are still in the dark. So don't be afraid to share your message to the world. You never know whose life you might be saving.